So now we're going to start with our invited guest presentations. One of the types of presentations that we try and have at each of these meetings is a company that's doing some really leading edge stuff in terms of end products with vision. And our next speaker, Stefan Heck, really embodies that category quite well. His company, Nauto, is using embedded vision, as you'll see, retrofitting it onto existing vehicles to add some really, I think, impressive capabilities and value. Stefan himself is also quite impressive, having previously held a senior role at McKinsey & Company. He's a consulting professor at Stanford. When he was a student there, he founded the Stanford Solar Car Project. He has longstanding interest in green technology, and you'll see how that intersects with embedded vision in his presentation now. Stefan.
Thanks, Jeff. And what you didn't mention, because it was a stealth mode thing, is I got a PhD in neural networks, now called deep learning, way before it was sexy, 25 years ago. It was an obscure field at that time. So I'm here to talk to you about how do we apply vision to safety, and in particular outdoor automotive safety, pedestrian safety in cities. That's the area that we're doing work in, and I think you'll like some of the role that vision plays there. But first, a little bit of a level set. When we talk about our transportation system the way it works today, how many of you actually drove here to this lovely Altera campus? Almost all of you, it looks like. Not surprising, because while you have First Street and there's light rail out there, light rail has very low utilization. So what's interesting about transportation is just how inefficient it is and how many levers there are to make it better. I'm going to give you a snapshot of just how pathetic it is today and then flip it around and say, why are there all these improvement levers and what role can vision play? So first of all, the vehicles themselves. Most of you probably heard they're actually parked 96% of the time. So your second biggest purchase after your house, unless you own a boat or a helicopter or something, is you basically bought it to park it. Less well known is of the 4% that you're in your car, almost half of that time is you either looking for parking or stuck in congestion. So the real driving benefit of your cars is just over 2%. That's pretty pathetic, but it gets worse. Let's look at the fuel. If you actually do an analysis, how much of the fuel, at now luckily a little bit cheaper, $3 a gallon or $2.90 or whatever it is right now, how much of that fuel actually really goes to moving the 1.2 people in the car from A to B, right? Typically one person, sometimes two. And the numbers are scary, 1%. Most of it turns into heat and global warming. Big chunk of the rest turns into other expenses for you, tire wear, brake wear. Most of the rest is moving steel around, not actually moving goods or people around. Then if you look at the roads, we've been spending about 5% of all in the entire GDP in the country for about 4 generations now on roads. Really big time, starting with the Eisenhower Interstate Project. Now most of the spending is at the city level, not at the federal level, subsidized by federal grants in many cases. But you do the math, at peak rush hour when there's not a traffic jam, so when throughput is at its maximum, which is about 2,000 cars per lane per hour, you get about 10% coverage of the roadway. And that's basically driven by the way humans drive, which is you need 7 or 8 or 9 car lengths, depending on the speed, between you and the car ahead of you to be able to drive safely. So that's your 10% coverage. And then how often does that happen? Well, basically in each direction, once a day, 5 days a week, right? Weekends we don't utilize anywhere near the peak, so that's about 5% of the time. Combine that together, you've got less than 0.5% utilization of our roads. And we accept the fact that for anybody in middle years, 25 to 40-year-old, this is the leading cause of death, much bigger than any disease that we hear about, much bigger than all the gunshots that we hear so much about on the news recently. And most of those are caused by human error. I'll show you in a moment, most of that human error is distraction. It's your senses not being aware of a danger around you, whether you didn't hear something or, obviously, to this forum, in most cases, you didn't see something. So hence, vision can play a role here in actually making that safer. So if we flip it around, well, first of all, the aggregate statistic is it's 99% waste in terms of you look at our spend on transportation. And the aggregate number is about $2 per mile. Now you're going to say, yeah, but the IRS gives me like 50 or 60 cents, right? That's because the rest you're spending indirectly as taxpayer to fund the roads and to fund the insurance that then funds your damage payout and so forth. So the total cost really is about $2 per mile all in.